Hey everyone, we're here at the Ratitude Podcast, and I am beyond excited today because I have one of my favorite people in the whole universe, the megaverse, the whatever verse, on today, Mr. Ed Blunt. And I'm just really excited. I'm just high because he just turns me on. I don't mean that in a funny way, but I met Ed at a network marketing company that was with travel. Can't even remember the name of it. Oh yeah, the Travel Club or something like that. It was the worst name ever. But Ed was the sort of the MC, the spokesperson, the motivator, the personal development guy that the company had hired. And I went to this meeting in, I believe it was Charlotte, North Carolina. Is Charlotte, North Carolina, not South Carolina? I'm a West Coast guy, so I don't know. But he led this meeting so brilliantly the whole day because I think there were about 50 of us there from all over the U.S. We didn't know very many. I didn't know anyone there. And I just was mesmerized with the storytelling, the motivation, the way he spoke, the tone, the body language, everything. And I wanted to get to know him. So I hired him as my life coach last year. And it was just a great experience. I've done some business with him now. And I think he's just one of the coolest people in the world. He's got a background in movies and songwriting. That's a different Ed Blunt, by the way. I looked you up. And do you know that there's a white young dude in the UK that calls himself Ed Blunt, and he's got a Wikipedia page and a website called Ed Blunt something.uk. So it's not you. Yeah. And he's a songwriter. So I don't know if you probably have written songs too, haven't you?
I have not.
You have not. But his shirt says, "I am an entrepreneur." And when I think about entrepreneurs, Ed is one of the people I think of. He introduced me to one of my also favorite people that I've listened to a lot, Ed. Les Brown, and my son and I went to watch him speak once at UCLA and got to meet with him and talk with him. And then he's one of Ed's personal friends and I believe mentors, and been on stage with him. In fact, I saw as I was preparing for this, I saw an interview with you and Les and Oprah Winfrey, where Les said that you are the next thing. You're the big one coming. And so, I'm just excited to introduce you to my friend and mentor and coach, Ed Blunt. Ed, welcome to the Ratitude Podcast.
Man, it's an honor to be here. I remember meeting you in Charlotte. What I remember from that, because we just were introduced by a mutual friend, I remember your energy. I remember your eyes, because your eyes were wide with curiosity. And that resonated with me because there's something about being a perpetual student, no matter what level of success and impact you've already had in the world. And I do remember the young lady that introduced me to you had said some things to me about you before I met you. She said, "Oh, he's a powerhouse. He's very successful. He's very successful in business. He's had a great career. He's doing other things now." You know, she really properly edified you before the meeting. And typically when I hear those kind of accolades for someone, sometimes you may get a little bit of arrogance. You may get a little bit of, okay, well, let's see what this thing is all about and impress me. And you didn't have any airs whatsoever. You were literally just like a brand new kid, if you will, in a candy store, just like taking everything in. And that just struck me because that's the quality that Mr. Les Brown has had since the day he and I started working together. He, to this day, has this childlike curiosity and joy and being very present in the moment. So I remember that. It's funny that you talk about the interview. It was actually Kim Jacobs. She looks a little bit like Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, I was wondering because I was looking at it and go, that looks kind of like Oprah Winfrey, but it's a better story if I say Oprah Winfrey.
I know, right? It was her television show, and that was a lot of fun. And Les for me has been someone that has taught me how to be present, how to think bigger, how to go for bigger goals. And most importantly, he gave me that foundation as a speaker. He's the one that got me into speaking. He's the one that kept leaning on me and encouraging me to look into that lane. And that's when I made a commitment to really take it seriously and focus on mastering that craft. And I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had to be with him, travel with him, do events with him throughout the country. It's been an incredible ride to this day. Like we're still, obviously very close and we talk a lot, but yeah, he's a great human being. And then when you told me you had met him in UCLA, you brought up the picture. I know the three of us got on the phone. I think it was Zoom or FaceTime. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But I love making those connections, reconnections. Les loves being able to, reconnect with people because he meets so many people, but he loves like having like a real interaction, a real connection. So yeah, man, you and I, it's been a great connection. And people connect for different reasons. They connect energetically, they connect spiritually. There's just something there that's not spoken, that's understood. And yeah, like you remind me a lot of Les because you both have these really big hearts. You're both incredibly generous and giving. I would say this is just because I have a very protective nature. I think the two of you are probably a little too generous and too giving. And so, working with you and being with Les, you guys remind me so much of each other because I find myself saying, hey, listen, I want both of you to be a little more protective of your time. I want both of you to be a little more protective of who you give your energy to because you guys have such positive energy. People love, obviously, to be around it. But sometimes the people that are around it are just takers. They're not really giving anything. So I think the parallels are pretty fascinating between the two of you.
Well, that's really kind of you to say, but I want to talk about you. So you talk about Les Brown like he's your guy. He was your mentor. But going back before that, just kind of describe your development. How did you get to this place where you're one of the wisest men that I know? I mean, I really, if I would search for any advice, I'd go like Tony Robbins, Les Brown, Ed Blunt on the same path. I would just say, wow, like how did that happen? Kind of take me through that as longly or shortly as you want. Maybe it's, one day you woke up and decided to listen to Les Brown. I don't know, but maybe there's more to it. What's your story?
Listen, first of all, that's a really, kind thing to say. It's certainly not anything that it's not necessarily me. It's what comes through me and it's who has poured into me. Mm-hmm. And, I've been very, very, very fortunate. I've had luck. If anybody that's watching this, you're on your particular path, you're pursuing a goal, you're getting after a business, whatever it may be. If anyone who's successful or even massively successful tells you that luck had nothing to do with it, they're lying. You got to have, I call it God's grace. You can call it luck, whatever you want to call it. You got to have some intervention that's bigger than you in order to have success. That's been my whole life journey. And I was very fortunate to have a circumstance where this is where we all have defining moments, significant life-changing moments. So I was introduced to death at the age of 9. So my best friend, who was also 9, died. And I'd never obviously experienced someone close to me dying. And I remember from that day forward feeling very privileged that I was still here because there were circumstances where I could have been with him. I could have been in that same dynamic. And I never, ever took that time for granted. I always felt like, well, now I got to really do something because he's not here. And I want to honor him because I'm still here. And when he passed, another young man came into my life shortly thereafter. And what I found out was that my parents had moved. My dad had gotten a promotion. We got relocated to a different city. And we lived around the corner, literally a 3-minute walk from another family who had a son. And we had the exact same birthdays.
Oh, wow.
And from the moment we met, we were literally like, we were brothers. And he was the person that kind of helped me deal with my grief in that transition. Because your 9-year-old brain can't process things, like we can as adults.
Sure.
We became best friends. His father happened to be a civil rights pioneer. His father happened to be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Officiated his wedding. He was like, they were boys.
Wow.
Like they were on the front lines of the civil rights movement together. So his father was a very prominent pastor and civil rights activist from Georgia to Cincinnati to Cleveland, Ohio. So I grew up with him as my second father. And that was when things began to shift and to open up and to expand. Because everybody here, we all have dysfunction and we have things that we're dealing with. Sometimes you think you're done with your past, but your past is not done with you. And people are still healing. And you'll hear this a lot. You'll hear, that stuff, the unresolved issues from your childhood, they still keep popping up. Wanting approval. I was watching Sly the other day. It's a documentary on Netflix. And Sylvester Stallone, he's talking about how his whole life has been around the fact that his father beat the crap out of him and never gave him the love and the attention that he wanted. That's what's been the driving force behind Rocky and the movies and the Rambos, and his entire mega successful career is all driven from unresolved issues with his dad. And that's such a powerful sentiment that I think most human beings can relate to. And because I had the second father figure, the second family that took me in, I would stay there when things were really, rough in my own home. Domestically, I had safe haven. I could go there. So that's where it all started. When you're talking about wisdom, if you're talking about insight, that's from Pop Moss. That's because we grew up around, Andrew Young and Jesse Jackson, that Reverend Al Sharpton, these political figures. Pop Moss was in President Carter's cabinet. He was his pastor and he's Oprah's pastor. And so Oprah came and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, Oprah's here. Like, what's Oprah doing here? He never told me that he was her pastor. And she shows up at a private event that we're doing for him to honor him. And she's there. And I'm like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, that's Oprah. I'm like, I know who that is, Pop. Like, but this is the man who really gave me insight into what being a man is, a dedicated husband. Never, ever have I seen him, and I've seen him in all situations, publicly and privately. Never have I ever seen him dishonor his wife, his children, always present, always working hard, always looking for ways to serve. And even to this day, and he's 86 years young, he continues to travel and speak and teach and promote human rights and civil rights and lift people up. And so that's where the foundation came from. Mr. Brown comes in, as the second major force. And that's because I didn't know this at the time. My father worked on his campaign, his initial campaign for the Ohio State legislature. My father helped. Mr. Brown came to our home and spent 2 days where he and my dad worked out a strategy for Mr. Brown to enter into the corporate world as a speaker. Because remember, if you all don't know Les Brown's story, nothing beyond a high school education, no corporate experience, no sales experience, and he wants to go be a major speaker for corporations. And so they came up with a strategy. And after those 2 days, Mr. Brown implemented it, and the rest is history. But I didn't know any of this. I saw Les Brown on PBS. It's possible. Live your dreams. And I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, this dude is amazing. And I was, yelling at the TV because he got me fired up. My mom comes in and is like, what are you doing? And I'm like, yo, this dude's amazing. She's like, oh, that's your Uncle Les. I'm like, Uncle Les? I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you don't remember when you were a little kid, he put you on the radio when he was a DJ, he let you sing a song, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, we know him? Like, what? So at that point, I just made it my business to build a relationship with him. And he came to my college at Morehouse. He just happened to be there to speak while I was there. And I said, from that point on, if I can just, be around him in any excuse. And he started calling me. He would call me like once every 6 months just to say, hey, how's it going? How you doing? And then he was in a city that I was in. And I said, hey, can I come help out? Like, I'd love to, do anything to support you. Come on. Yeah, sure. And we started building a relationship from there. And in 2004 or 5, I was on Broadway with Denzel Washington doing Julius Caesar. I invited Mr. Brown. I took him backstage. Now, if you all have ever seen footage of like Elvis Presley or the Beatles when they're getting off the plane, out of the car, everybody's screaming, that's what it was like every single night being on Broadway with Denzel Washington.
Oh, okay.
I got a chance to meet all of my favorite people. You named them, they were all there. You named them. Anyone you can think of, they were all there. They all came backstage. So every night backstage, there was just, a lot of, hoopla. So I said, hey, D, we call him D. Say, hey, D, I want to introduce you to Mr. Les Brown. Mr. Les Brown is Denzel Washington. And immediately, Denzel starts spouting off quotes, Les Brown quotes back to Les.
Wow.
And I'm watching this and I'm taking this in. And I'm like, wow, like the impact when you dedicate your life to becoming a speaker, a communicator, pouring into people, you just don't know who it's going to touch, how it's going to stay with them, how it's going to influence them. And from that moment on, I really started to understand the impact that I could have as a speaker. And I started to make a transition out of acting because I was still doing TV, still doing film. I actually done my biggest role in a film at that point. And I remember my agent called me for the first time with an offer. And he said, hey, they're going to offer you $5,000 for the day to do this. It was a soap opera. And I was like, can't do it. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, I have to go to Seattle. Mr. Brown's got me an opportunity to go train with T. Harv Eker, Peak Potentials. You guys ever heard of Secrets of the Millionaire Mind? That's the author. He was doing a live event, three-day millionaire mindset training. I said, Mr. Brown gave me an opportunity to go to this training. I'm going. I needed the money. I needed that job, by the way. Right. I needed it. I'm an actor. If y'all know about actors, you're only as good as your next gig.
Right.
But I just took a leap of faith and said, hey, I'm going to bet on myself and see where it takes me. And that's kind of the foundation. So anything that you're getting from me, it's from my elders. It's from relationships, people like you that come into my life and we have a connection and you share with me, your story, your journey, the arc of it, the trials and tribulations, what you've overcome. I glean from that. I learn from that and I don't forget it. And so that, again, it just adds to, how I can bring value to the equation. So anything that you're experiencing or have from me, it's just because of who's poured into me and who I've associated with, for sure.
Yeah. So, Ed, that was fascinating how that story and even your beginning comment about luck. Do you think that every single person has that opportunity, has something placed in their life that could have or should have or maybe still could motivate them to make a significant change in their life? Or some people just lucky and other people aren't? What do you think?
That's such a great question. I believe that if you commit to positive change, you can create the luck. So if you're in a circumstance that is beyond your control, I went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and I volunteered with Habitat for Humanity. And I was actually working in the play. This is when Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were together. They actually were the ones that were building this section up near the Ninth Ward. So I was there, and there was a 17-year-old kid. And I said, what are you doing here? He said, man, I have lived in 23 homes over the last 13 years because I've been a product of the system. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't know what it is to have any level of stability. And the only way I can find sanity is by giving back. I got to find it was his escape. Yeah. And someone would look at that and you may say, well, where is he now? Because if that is his come from, the probability that he's thriving right now is very, very low. Mm-hmm. So the question becomes, well, if regardless of the circumstance, can I make a commitment to positive change? And I believe if you make the commitment, you start to take actions in spite of your surroundings, in spite of your circumstances. And if you take enough action, it's kind of like you're creating this vibration, and that vibration can attract something to you. This is why when people are on the side of the road and they're holding up a sign saying, I need money, most people don't pay them any attention. But if you see somebody on the side of the road and they're trying to fix their car, you're more likely to pull over and help because they're doing something to address their situation versus just waiting for somebody to give them something. So I think in terms of that dynamic, if you make the commitment and you start taking the action, yes, but are there some people who have more luck than others? 100%. Absolutely.
You know, there was a book written a few years ago. I can't remember the professor. She was a professor at Stanford, and she talked about fixed mindset versus growth mindset.
Yes.
And I don't know if you are familiar with
I know exactly what you're talking about. Carol.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that one. and I think about this quite a bit because, you know, in my world, maybe your world, there's a lot of people with growth mindset. And it's easier to work with those people because they want to grow. Yeah. But sometimes there's people with fixed mindset and somehow they enter your life. And sometimes they actually might ask you, you know, how do you do that? Or I'm not really satisfied with my life. Have you had experience working with people with a fixed mindset and you know, how they might actually change or what you might do to inspire or coach, mentor them into a change if you've got a fixed mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. In my experience, there's nothing to be done with someone who has a fixed mindset because that's where it starts. That's why, you know, you said sometimes they come into your life. The probability of a fixed mindset coming into your life is 100% because it's most of the population. So you're not going to avoid that. However, recognizing it is a starting point because I used to be, and I'm sure you can relate to this, the person who wanted to save everyone. The reason I took the path that I took in psychology was because I came from a dysfunctional family. So I wanted to fix everyone in my family. I wanted to fix the alcoholism. I wanted to fix the violence. I wanted to fix the disrespect. And I thought if I went down the path of psychology, I could fix everyone. No, it doesn't work that way. But recognizing someone who has a fixed mindset doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean that your door is not open if they decide to take on a growth mindset. It just means you got to recognize this is their journey. This is their path. And they may say they want more. This is why when I talked about this earlier last week, someone says, hey, you know what, Robert, I've decided I'm going to get in shape. I just want to take better care of myself. But their mindset is based on comfort food, emotional eating, and laziness. So they say they want a better lifestyle. And they may go and purchase a gym membership. They may even sign up for a couple of personal training sessions. But within a month, they've reverted back to their habits because their identity is still that of a out of shape, overweight person who eats poorly. That's the identity. They tried to put the behavior on top of the identity, and that's why it never works. This is why when people set goals at the beginning of the year, they don't, by the end of January, early February, it's already, they've forgotten about it. You cannot put behavior on top of a poor identity. However, you can change your identity and then create the behavior from that. Because see, if it's coming from the identity, your behavior is not going to change. It'll improve. It can only improve. So I look for growth mindset. And if someone says, I am aware, I have a fixed mindset, I want to do something about it. Well, they've just said in that sentence, they no longer have a fixed mindset. They just said, okay, I'm out of that space. I'm in a growth mindset now. Yeah. So those are the two categories where I'm going to put 90% of my time. 10%, we tithe 10%, we give 10%. 10% is going to be allocated to people who have fixed mindsets, but they have great hearts. Mm-hmm. They're well-intentioned. So sure. I'll give you 10% of my time. I'll support you. I'll encourage you. I'll love on you. We'll hang out. We'll go to the movies. But I know what you are in terms of your fixed mindset, but I'm not being judgmental about it because we've all been there. Mm-hmm. We've all had fixed mindsets about certain things, whether if it was a relationship, a job we were in love with, and this job is perfect, and I'll never leave my job, and then your job leaves you, and so we've all been there. But I think those are the two categories where I would put most of my time: growth mindset and a person who's just committed to it.
So let's say someone is kind of at that place, a fixed mindset, but kind of wants to change, which means they're kind of teetering on growth mindset. Mm-hmm. What kinds of things or tools or techniques might you try to change their identity?
Yeah, that's good. I got to figure out and why. I want to understand why and what matters to you. Because it has to be an emotional hot button. It's got to be something emotional that they're connected to, that they're drawn to. So, for example, when I first got involved in entrepreneurialism and network marketing, I didn't know anything about it. I was completely uneducated and misinformed on top of that. So I had heard things about network marketing, but they weren't true. They were, interpretations of people that didn't know what they were talking about. So I was listening to the wrong people. And I said to myself, I'm going to learn this skill and I'm going to get really good at it. That was just a private conversation between me and me. Now, I had my reasons. My reasons were personal because of my own sense of self-respect and accomplishment. So there are some people, they're self-motivated. They're driven for internal reasons that really move them and burn them. Before we got on the call, I was watching a film. It's called Sunea. It's about the woman who swam from to Florida to Cuba, right?
Yes.
And she was Naiad. 64 years young. What'd you call it?
Naiad is her last name. Naiad.
And that name means literally mermaid of the sea. It had significant meaning to her. Mm-hmm. And people kept asking, why are you trying to do this now? Like you couldn't do it when you were 28. You think you're gonna do it when you're 64? And she's like, you don't understand. At 64, I got the mental game now. I didn't have the mental game at 28. Yeah, I have the physical, but the physical doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't have the mental game. So she was, she's the living embodiment. I love this story of making it. It meant so much to her own personal pride. So she's internally driven, and that works for her. Sylvester Stallone, he was externally driven, but that worked for him. Look at the body of work this man created. He will be forever remembered because of his body of work, but it was all driven from some external motivating factor. So that person who's teetering or, I want to go from fixed to growth. Well, let me find what's the compelling reason. And there's no right or wrong. If you're like, hey, I'm motivated because my mother told me I wasn't going to be nothing. Okay, great. Well, your mom died 20 years ago. It doesn't matter. I'm still motivated. Okay, well, let's use that. Yeah. Let's tap into that. So I love finding that emotional thing because that is the thing that keeps the motor going. Yeah.
Is that the why then?
Yeah.
Yeah. I started dance lessons 6 months ago, and it's kind of bizarre because I've never liked to dance in my life. I'm not a dancer. When, in high school, if I could get myself to go to dance, I would stand against the wall and just watch everyone and not dance. I was scared to do it, and I just haven't been a dancer. And I decided to just go for it. I'm in this dance showcase on December 16th, dancing a waltz to Moon River, which was my dad's favorite song, or at least that's my memory of his favorite song. Mm-hmm. My instructor, she asked me, why are you dancing? And the answer I first came up with wasn't a very good one. And I had to think about it. And as I've thought about it, it actually has changed sort of. In fact, I was thinking about it on my run this morning, is I've got actually some really good reasons. I want to get in shape. I want to connect music to movement so that actually, because I started playing the guitar so that I could hear better music.
Wow.
And by doing it through dance, you actually kind of do it. Plus, I want to have fun. Plus, I want to get smooth. All these, I came up with 5 or 6 reasons. I go, oh, I actually do have a good reason other than I just kind of fell into this. I bought some lessons and then I had to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, it was just kind of fun. But I hadn't thought about that why in a while since I think the Tony Robbins world, because that's kind of a big deal there.
Yeah.
And, you go from different places to different places, and you forget some of the stuff, but it's all in there.
It's true.
It's all in there. All our growth opportunities are all in there. What are you doing currently, to grow, to live life to the fullest, to be Ed Blunt, not the guy in UK, but the one here that's the coolest guy I know?
Now, listen, I think that someone said this, that they should have seminars that fit on failing. Like they should pick people who fail and have them do seminars. Everybody has seminars on how to be successful, how to win, how to do this, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that's such an interesting perspective because we don't really spend a lot of time understanding failure and the purpose of it and the power of failure. We look at failure kind of like we look at death. Like nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to, it's kind of like, it's kind of hush hush tones. And what got me to what I'm doing today was the experience of an entrepreneur and working to find this vehicle, because they always talk about, Steve Jobs, his speech is referenced so many times that he gave at Stanford's graduation when he talks about connecting the dots when you look back. You can only do that when you're looking back. And I didn't understand the gravity of what I had accomplished when I was doing it because I was totally ignorant. I didn't know that being a first-time entrepreneur building a sales team, that it was a big deal creating from 0 to 7 figures a year people that had never made more than $60,000 a year. Like I didn't know that was like a big thing. I didn't know that building an organization in New York City of over 100,000 people just in that one city, I didn't know that was a big deal because that's where I started building. I didn't know having an organization of over 140,000 people was a big deal, but it was a bit like I didn't know all these things were significant. And I was in such a flow state and I was able to do and pour into people the way that I love doing it. I just thought it was going to be this way forever. It's kind of like, your first business success. If you don't know anything, I call new money dumb money. Like the first time you have some money consistently, it's dumb money because you've never had it before. So how are you supposed to know what to do with it or how to treat it or how to act with it? So we're riding that wave. And then there was a big crash because the company outgrew itself. The Peter principle, meaning there were people that were in positions they were not qualified to be in those positions because the company was growing so fast. And the company imploded. And we went from, something to nothing like pretty quickly. Yep. And then the next several years was a process of me figuring out what is going to be our entrepreneurial vehicle. Because now that I'm an entrepreneur, I don't ever want to be cured from that.
Right.
I wasn't sour on being an entrepreneur. I was sour on the experience. And here's what I learned. I was willing to continue to take calculated risks. I was willing to continue to try and fail. I was okay with failure. I was not okay with not trying. And I was not okay with allowing my jadedness to keep me out of the game. Now, when you're in business, sometimes you do the best you can with what you have. So for example, when I was an actor, you'll see some movies that I was in. I'm not necessarily promoting those movies. I was in a movie called Down. Down was about killer elevators that we shot at Madison Square Garden. I'm not promoting that movie. Like I ain't talk about that movie. It's one of my movies. But that was the best role that was available for me at that time. I'm an actor. I need to act. I'm an entrepreneur. So I got into some Forex education. And then I helped a friend with a startup that was supposed to be travel. Then it morphed into products, that it morphed into Forex education. I was like, nope. And so I've learned so much through that. And then, got into, you and I did some hard lending in the crypto space. And, it was one thing. And then all of a sudden it was something totally different. We were like, wait a minute, that's not what we signed up for.
Right.
But we both went into it with our eyes open and said, okay, well, let's see what we can do. Fortunately, we came out okay. But, most people don't have that experience. So I say all that to say that when I had resigned myself to a lane of business, but it wasn't a business that I was passionate about. It was a business that was very stable and I knew I could have success in it, but it wasn't anything I was like fired up about. And then I get a phone call. And once again, Mr. Brown has been at this fulcrum point for me a couple of times. One, transitioning from an actor to a speaker. And then now I was in life insurance. I was selling policies and building an agency, to getting me back to my home. So my home, if you all can guess, people ask me all the time, are you a trainer? And I'm like, yeah, how'd you know? And they're like, well, you look like a trainer. And I was like, I do? I was like, and I'm thinking, well, I train. I do training for corporations. And they're like, no, personal trainer. Like, you do
personal trainer. Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not a personal trainer. But I'm obviously passionate about fitness and health and well-being. So Mr. Brown calls me and says, hey, listen, I would love for you to have a conversation with this young lady. She's been a very dear friend of mine for about 15 years. And, I want you guys to meet. And he says, do you know who Kim Wee is? And I'm like, of course I know who Kim Wee is. Like, she's a phenomenal leader, great businesswoman. But she and I are very, very, very similar in how we lead, how we process, and where we place honor and integrity in terms of how we do business and life. And so I was like, I would love to talk with her. And he says, well, before I get you on the phone with her, I want you to know she's resigned from her current company. And she asked Mr. Brown if he would like to be a part of this launch. And I'm thinking, Robert, hold on a second, because when you're earning over $1 million a month, you don't just walk away from that lightly. Like she'd been doing that for years. Mm-hmm. I said, whatever this thing is, I want to see it. Like, I want to know what it, like, now you got my curious and my antenna up. So we get on the phone, have a great conversation. And she says, well, go here, look at this. You can see the products. And I go, look, and I'm like, oh, these are nutraceuticals. I've been taking nutraceuticals for 25 years. Like, that's my jam. Like, I've been experimenting for years. What's the best thing to put in my body? How do I increase my energy? Stamina, endurance, anti-inflammation. Like, I've been experimenting for years. And I'm looking at the products and I'm saying, these are the best ingredients with no filler and no negative interaction I've ever seen in 25 years. So I immediately called my sources. I got a husband and wife that run a med spa in Miami. I said, I want you guys to look at these and tell me your feedback. So I gave them my site to read all the ingredients. I called another friend that you and I both know, used to play semi-professional basketball. And she's a yoga instructor. So she does retreats in Morocco. I said, I know how you are. I said, look at these. Tell me what you think. She's like, all right. You're not going to like what I have to say, because if people ask me all the time, I'm like, give me your best shot. So she calls me back first and says, these ingredients are awesome. The husband and wife couple called me and said, hey, we signed up for the biggest pack. We've been looking for a partner for 5 years. And it was like we were off to the races, because that's my wheelhouse. It's like, how do you strengthen your mind? How do you strengthen your body? I'm all about preventative well-being and proactive wellness, so that we don't get to the point where you're going to have to need X, Y, and Z. So getting the feedback from people that have been utilizing these, including myself and Nadia, kids that have been using the products, it's been phenomenal. So being able to tie all that together, and that's the one thing that really lent itself to my success when I was in the travel business, which was, it was always holistic for me. It was never just about this one thing. It was about, how do you become a better partner or husband or wife, parent? How do you become more present in your life? If you have a job, how do you become more successful in your job while you're doing our business? So it's a holistic component, and financial stewardship is at the heart of it, because again, I didn't get financial training when I was coming up. You shared some of your principles with me that's helped me to understand and grow more. So getting people to understand the value of a dollar, what to do with a dollar, how to be a better practitioner, a better giver. It's not how much you take in, it's what you do with what you take in. And then if you learn those principles before you start making whatever, 10, 20 grand a month, then you're in really good shape. Versus what happens with most people is that they start making money and they've never made money. No one's ever talked to them about it and they spend it all.
And that's really cool. And people can, I assume, go to your website and find out more information about that if they want. As you were speaking, I had this question that popped into my head.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing any acting now, is that right?
No, not true. I do some commercials every now and then. I do photo shoots.
The question I had is, if there was, like, in the future, a movie, let's say a movie role that you really wanted to do, what would it be? Like if you could dream of a movie that would star Ed Blunt, not from the UK.
Yeah.
I don't know why I think that's funny, but I do. Can you imagine what that would be?
It's all about the story. Is the story impactful?
What would the story be? Make it up now. You're a great storyteller.
It would be a story about, it's the themes would be relatable, like overcoming an obstacle, having a specific goal or dream or outcome that you're fighting for, and how do you navigate the obstacles especially when it looks like it's never going to happen. How do you maintain your faith in your spirit in spite of those things? So I'll give you a real life example. When I was off Broadway in a play called The Exonerated, and it was a true story of individuals who have been wrongfully convicted, sentenced to death. And eventually, let's go back to that luck thing. Eventually, their voices were loud enough that someone took their case and went through all of the muck and the mire of the system and got it before the right judge before they were executed, and they were spared. Their convictions were overturned. Yeah. And I played 1, 2, 3. So I played 3 of these life stories, and depending on the month, I played different roles. But I went through that process. And let me share something with you, man. If you think being sentenced to death row and you didn't do anything is horrible, let's not even talk about what you experience while you're incarcerated and then what you experience when you get out. Because there are no programs whatsoever for people who are wrongfully convicted and released. They got plenty of programs if you did the crime and you get out.
Right.
But there are no programs if you're wrongfully convicted. I'm talking 26 years on death row. And then you realize we made a mistake. Sorry. And understanding how does a person navigate the world? Because now you're dealing with arrested development. If you went into prison when you're 19, you still think like a 19-year-old, but now you're in a 45-year-old body. Like, how do you reconcile that? Yeah. So being able to be a part of that artistically was the most rewarding. The money we raised financially was life-changing for them. We got a lot of money in their pocket. And then the governor of Illinois put a stay on executions because we went there to do the performance. We got all the politicians to come out, and he put a stay on. So that, like, if it can work on those levels and tell a good story, man, like that's it right there. And my reviews, by the way, I got to tell you, I don't know if you remember an actor by the name of Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
Brian Dennehy was great. Oh, he was so good. And he had recently got a Tony for Death of a Salesman because it was such a, he's such a big guy at the time. Well, my reviews were better than his. Like, so for me, that was I was like, okay, I'm good. Like, I don't know if I will ever do a play again, but if I don't, I'm okay because I've gotten this experience and the people that I met, relationships that I built from that. And I got a million stories from that one run, which is about 2.5 years that we did that.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that you would have great reviews because you're a great guy. So, kind of as a final story, for our listeners that want to have a gratitude life, whatever that means for them. You've got so many inspirational kinds of quotes and sayings and stories. Pick your best one to share with us as we kind of conclude here.
A gratitude life is a life that's worth living, a life that's worth telling stories about, a life that's worth repeating. And in order to get to that life and to be in that frequency consistently, that's the thing. If you watch Robert on his worst day, when he's not feeling his best, even on his worst day, he has a higher vibrational level. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have low moments. We all have those. But even in his low moments, he has a high level of vibration because he has trained himself to consistently tap into that higher frequency. Now, for those of you that want that rad life, it is a discipline, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just based on how you feel. Because if you just base everything off of how you feel, you're in trouble. But if you respect the discipline of where it is that you want to go and you stay vested in your outcome, living in your future, living in your vision has to be bigger, has to be more dynamic than your current circumstances. You understand, hey, whatever I'm going through right now, it's an opportunity. It's a blessing. I'm supposed to take something from this. I'm being forged by the fire that I'm going through right now, because some of you right now, you're in the midst of a breakup and your heart is in a million pieces, but you still showed up. Some of you, you're on a job that you don't want to be in, but you still showed up. Some of you, your business is going backwards instead of forwards, but you still showed up. You understand that what you are going through is just a part of that forging process so that you can increase the frequency and the vibration that you're living at. Here's the most important thing I can give you. In this era of mass distraction that we live in, we are bombarded constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through social media, the electronic income reducers in any form of screen, the scroll zone. You start scrolling, you get sucked in at 25 minutes to 2 hours later. You're like, where did the time go? You have to be protective of your space. This space of creativity, of imagination, of boldly going where you've never gone before with your vision, it has to be sacred. So put your phones down. Stop scrolling. It's okay. You don't have to pick up the phone every time it rings. You don't have to run and look every time you hear a text message come in or an email come in. Have some sacred space time for your creative process. Give yourself permission to not only dream, but live in the dream. Walk with the dream, run with the dream, make love to your dream, and let it be a part of your process and get it more finely tuned and add more details. When Nadia is doing a painting, the initial painting looks nothing like what it does on day 15 or day 20 because the nuance and the details have all been filled in. You got to do the same thing with your dream. You got to add more colors to it and have more sounds to it. And what does it feel like? And if you can get excited by that, the same way you do when you fall asleep and you dream accidentally and your body's responding, whatever that dream may be, it could be an exciting dream, a scary dream, but your body responds. Well, you don't have to dream accidentally. You can dream on purpose. And when you dream on purpose, you get to be in 100% control of all the dynamics. And the more you are vested in living in your future, the more your future is going to come to you. Whatever it is that you are seeking is also seeking you, but you cannot allow all of these other elements and people, for that matter, be protective. You can't just allow pigeons to come into your space. You got to surround yourself with eagles. And if you do that, you have a much higher likelihood of manifesting your dream. But more importantly, what you become in the process is something no one can ever take away from you. So stay the course, lean on your discipline, fall back on your good habits, and that will ensure a much more powerful outcome for you.
Ed Blunt, you inspire me. You are just awesome.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for being here. It's such a pleasure, such an honor. I'm headed to my strength training class. I hired a Serbian military guy now to take me from where you brought me over the last year to now even higher. And after that, I'm going dancing, then walking meditation on the beach. I'm going to be thinking about you the whole time. Thank you for being here. Ed Blunt, you're awesome.
Thank you, brother. You too, man. Much love.
All right. Gratitude, and we're out.